So many great cameras are being released right now. It is absolutely insane. But that doesn't mean that we should just forget about the camera that we all have in our pocket. Our smartphones. So that is why in this video I'm going to share some tips and tricks that will make your videos look more cinematic and help you level up your mobile videography game. And because I don't discriminate, all of these tips can be applied to both Android phones and iPhones. I am using a Samsung S9 and I am using the native camera app on my smartphone. I know that there are some great apps out there with some great features, but I'm just using the native app, and I know that all of these tips that I'm going to give you can also be applied to the native camera app on an iPhone. My first tip has everything to do with resolution, aka quality, and frames per second. Now, most phones offer 4K and 1080p right now. If you go into settings, you can check what your phone offers, and most newer phones also offer different frame rates. Now, if you want to film some cinematic slow motion B-roll, you want to make sure that you film it in a higher frames per second. Now, my phone, for example, offers 60 frames per second, which means that there are 60 frames within 1 second instead of 25 or 30 frames, for example. So that allows you to stretch it out, or in other words, slow it down, and it will look buttery smooth. So before you start filming, make sure that you check the resolution and make sure that you check in what frame rate you're filming your videos. Regardless of what phone you have, it is always worth checking all of the video settings to see how you can optimize your video. One setting that I really recommend you to turn on is grid lines. Grid lines will help you compose the image, and it will help you straighten the horizon so that you don't need to do that in post. Before we start filming, we have to lock our exposure and our focus. And we do this by tapping on our screen and then holding that point. And as you can see, now it is all locked. And again, this works both on iPhones and Android smartphones. And the reason why this is so important is we want to lock in our exposure because we do not want the brightness of our video to change as we move the camera around, because that just, it looks horrible. Like I said, it will also lock the focus, which is very important because we don't want our smartphone to bounce back between the foreground and the background of the video. We just want it to focus on one point and stay focused on that point. So by locking our exposure and locking our focus, we will have more control over our video, which will not make it look amateuristic, it will make it look cinematic. Now that it is time to start filming, my first tip is to not film at eye level. It is very tempting when you are somewhere, whether you are on vacation or you're actually trying to film something, it is very, very tempting to just film like this. But instead, get crazy, get low, get high, just film in different perspectives, and you will see that this will add a lot to your video. My second tip is actually a nice addition to the first tip, and that is to add movement. Now, you don't need to add movement to all of your clips, but make sure that there is a nice balance, because adding movement to your videos will make it look a lot more cinematic. But when I say movement or when I say motion, I don't mean pan from left to right or from right to left or up and down, but make sure that you move with your camera, or in this case with your smartphone. So for example, you can start low and then slowly rise up to mimic a crane movement. One issue that you may run into when you start adding movement to your videos is that it looks shaky. So a nice little hack that will both help stabilize your videos as well as add even more movement is using a phone gimbal. Now, Zhiyun, sorry guys, they were kind enough to send me this phone gimbal to try out. I'm not being paid to include this. They just sent it to me to test it. I decided that I wanted to include it because I think I kind of like it. And this is also the first time they are seeing it, so don't you worry about any of that. I enjoyed using this phone gimbal, and I'm still using this phone gimbal. A lot of people on the internet don't like phone gimbals because they say that the in-camera stabilization of your phone will do the trick. Now, I don't really agree with that because not everyone has the newest of the newest phone. And also, if your phone is your main camera, then I think it's definitely something to consider, especially because this thing is only 60 bucks. So here are two shots of me walking without a gimbal and with a gimbal. I think that there is a noticeable difference between the two, and especially if you have an older phone, this is definitely a great option. The Smooth X gimbal is also a selfie stick, which in my opinion changes the game, because now not only can you stabilize your footage and add more motion, but you can also reach different heights that you can't without a regular gimbal or just with your hand. It is very easy to set up. The only issue that I had with this phone gimbal is not the gimbal, it is my phone, because my phone has this stupid Bixby button that I've never used. So when I tried to stabilize the gimbal, it activated Bixby, but I made it work. So yeah, like I said, it's only 60 bucks. It's pretty decent. I'm definitely going to continue using it. There will be a link in the description if you want to check it out. Another great way to make your smartphone video look more cinematic is by creating depth. For example, what you can do is you can use foreground when you're filming something. And with the focus locked in, you will have this nice blurry looking foreground, which will create a lot more depth. The next tip I have is something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but that is to scan your surroundings and take advantage of it. Whether you are on vacation or you're on location, don't just film an impression of where you're at, but actually take some time to scan your surroundings, look for details, look for little subjects that you can use in your video to make it more cinematic. One very simple example that looks very good is, for example, the sun peeking through the leaves of the tree. Now, if you film that in slow motion and you add some movement to it, you have a great shot. So definitely take your time to look for a subject or look for details that will add to the story of your video. Now that we filmed everything on our phone, it is time to edit it, and we don't need to send it to our computer and edit it on our computer. We can edit it on our phone. I actually made a video about how to edit on your phone, which I will link right here and in the description. And I also added some nice tips and tricks that you're gonna love, such as adding cinematic black bars.